I first met Ethan Marlowe on a morning that smelled like wet stone and expensive lilies, like the house itself was holding its breath. The Marlowe mansion rose behind iron gates, the way a cathedral rises from fog, deliberate, quiet, and certain that anything entering would be measured. I'm Carlos Vieira, a journalist by trade and by curse. I've learned that grief leaves fingerprints on everything, on coffee cups, on door frames, on the way a man answers questions he's answered 1,000 times but still can't survive. Ethan Marlowe was the kind of billionaire whose name people said with a mix of admiration and resentment, self-made, relentless, the sort who turned problems into purchases. But that morning, he wasn't relentless. He looked used. The foyer was all marble and muted light, with Eleanor's portrait watching from the far wall, her smile soft, almost knowing, as if she'd stepped out only moments ago and left the perfume behind on purpose. A hint of jasmine drifted from somewhere deeper in the house, or maybe it was memory playing tricks on me, the way it always does when people talk about the dead like they're still in the next room. Ethan stood by the grand staircase, one hand on the rail like it was the only thing keeping him upright. "Carlos," he said, and it sounded like he was greeting a doctor. "Thank you for coming." We were supposed to be filming a profile, the grieving billionaire father raising his twin boys after the tragic death of his wife. A story about resilience, a story the world would share. But the mansion had other plans. A soft patter of footsteps came from the corridor to the right, and then the twins appeared, Noah and Lucas Marlowe, 9 years old, matching curls, matching brown eyes, matching the same gentle slope in their features that made people forget they were individuals. People said the twins the way they said the weather, like it was one thing. It wasn't. Noah walked a little behind, quiet as a held breath, his gaze lowered to the sketchbook tucked under his arm. His fingers stroked the paper's edge, as if it was a comfort object. When he looked up at me, he didn't smile, but his eyes took in everything. My shoes, my watch, the pen in my pocket, the tiny tear in the leather strap of my camera bag. Noah didn't speak much, Ethan had told me in emails, but he communicated with the precision of a poet. Lucas, on the other hand, came in like a bright song. He threw his arms wide as if the world was already his friend. "Hi," Lucas said, too loud in the echoing foyer. Then he laughed at his own volume and clapped once, delighted. But as he stepped closer, I noticed something else. His hand drifted up to the side of his head, fingers pressing near his ear, like he was trying to hold something in place. Ethan saw it too. His face tightened, and then he loosened it again, like a man forcing himself to be calm. "Lucas has been having headaches," Ethan said quickly, as if it was a small thing. "We've seen specialists. It's sensory. Sometimes they get overwhelmed." Lucas leaned against the wall for a second, blinking hard. The smile came back, but it looked taped on. Noah's eyes flicked to his brother's hand, then to Ethan's face, and then, quietly, Noah lifted his sketchbook and hugged it closer. From the hallway, another presence arrived, not with footsteps like the twins, but with a steady rhythm that felt like confidence. A woman in a neat navy uniform, hair pulled back, posture straight, eyes alert without being hard. She was black, maybe early 30s, with the kind of composure you see in people who've had to be the adult since childhood. "Mr. Marlowe," she said softly, "breakfast is ready and the tea you asked for." Ethan's shoulders eased half an inch. "This is Ms. Nia Carter," he told me, "our house manager. She's been a blessing." Nia gave me a respectful nod. Her eyes, warm, steady, met mine with that quiet understanding people have when they've seen pain in other houses and know it all looks the same eventually. "Nice to meet you, Mr. Vieira," she said. "Carlos," I answered. "Please." Lucas drifted toward her without thinking, like his body recognized safety. Nia didn't flinch or stiffen the way some adults do when a child approaches too fast. She simply angled her arm slightly, and Lucas slipped into the space beside her, leaning into her hip like she'd always been there. "Morning, sunshine," Nia murmured. Lucas's face softened. He pressed his cheek to her side, then lifted his hand and tapped twice against her wrist. Tap, tap. Nia tapped back, tap, tap, then pressed her palm gently to her own chest and then to Lucas's chest, like a tiny ritual. I watched it and felt my reporter instincts sharpen. People didn't create small rituals like that unless they needed them. Noah stepped closer too, slower, cautious. Nia turned, lowered herself just a little to Noah's height, and held out 2 fingers in a small V shape. Noah stared, then lifted his own hand, mirrored it, and their fingers touched lightly. 2 fingers to 2 fingers, like a secret handshake that didn't require words. Ethan noticed me noticing and looked away. The grief in him had turned into a constant calculation. What can I control? What can I buy? What can I fix before it breaks? But some things weren't fixable with money. We moved deeper into the mansion. The dining room was long and formal, sunlight sliding across polished wood like a whisper. Beyond it, through arched doors, I saw the library with its dark shelves and ladder rails, the music room with a covered grand piano, and a hallway that led to what Ethan called the twins' wing, painted in calmer colors, with sensory-friendly lighting and soft rugs, and a wall filled with their drawings framed like art in a gallery. The mansion wasn't just a house, it was a body, and every room felt like an organ working overtime to keep a family alive. At breakfast, Lucas barely touched his pancakes. He smiled at me and made a joke about how syrup looked like gold, and then he pressed his palm to the side of his head again. This time his eyes watered. He tried to blink it away, but the pain, whatever it was, pulled his mouth down for half a second. Ethan reached for his phone. "I'll call Dr. Klein," he said. "Again." Nia's hand paused near Lucas's cup. She didn't contradict Ethan, not directly. She simply watched Lucas the way a mother watches a baby near a staircase, ready, alert, refusing to look away. Noah slid his sketchbook across the table toward me, just a little. I looked down. On the page was a drawing of 2 boys under a huge house. The house had eyes. One eye was crying. The boys held hands. And on the side of one boy's head, near the ear, Noah had drawn a small, dark oval. A seed, a stone, a something. Noah tapped the drawing once, then twice, then looked at Lucas and made a tiny grimace like he was trying to mimic pain. My stomach tightened. "Has Lucas told you where it hurts?" I asked gently, careful not to pressure him. Lucas gave me a brave smile. "Head," he said, then pointed near his ear again. "Boom, boom." Ethan's jaw clenched. "They've said it's migraines, or stress." The change after Elena. His voice cracked on her name, and he swallowed it down like a man swallowing glass. "We have the best doctors in the country. The best." Naya's gaze stayed on Lucas. Her voice when she spoke was respectful but firm in that way only someone with real moral courage can manage. "Mr. Marlowe," she said quietly, "with respect, sometimes the best doesn't mean the most careful. Sometimes it just means the most expensive." Ethan stared at her, shocked, not angry, just startled, like someone had nudged him awake. Lucas made a small sound, a hum, and then leaned forward as if dizzy. Nia stood instantly, moving around the table, her hand on Lucas's shoulder. "Come on, baby," she whispered. "Let's do our calm steps." She led him toward the twins' wing. I caught a glimpse of that hallway up close, the soft mural of clouds on the ceiling, the sensory swing tucked into one corner, the reading nook with blankets that looked like they'd been hugged into shape. This was a space built for comfort, a space built by a father trying to make up for absence with design. And yet Lucas still hurt. Ethan watched them leave, his hands shaking slightly as he tried to keep them still. He turned to me, and for a moment his billionaire mask slipped completely. "I can't lose another person in this house," he said in a low voice. "I can't. I should have been thinking about headlines, I should have been thinking about angles and narratives, but something about the way Noah's drawing sat between us, like a warning, made me feel the story was already writing itself, without our permission." Later that day, I followed Ethan through the garden. The grounds were immaculate, trimmed hedges, winter roses clinging to color, a stone fountain whose water sounded like quiet applause. Ethan talked about Elena there, because everyone talks about the dead in places they loved. "She used to walk here at night," Ethan said, staring at the path. "Barefoot. She said the cold stone made her feel alive." He paused by a rosebush. "She kept secrets," he added, almost to himself. "Everyone does," I said. Ethan's eyes flicked to me, not like Eleanor. Behind us, the mansion's tall windows watched like silent witnesses. When we returned inside, the house felt tense in a new way, like it had sensed the fragile balance shifting. I heard Lucas crying from down the hall, not a dramatic sob, but a thin, exhausted sound. Ethan's face went pale. He rushed toward the twins' wing, and I followed at a distance, my camera forgotten in my bag. We reached the doorway. Nia was kneeling beside Lucas in the playroom. Lucas sat on a soft mat, hands pressed to his head, Tears rolled down his cheeks, and he looked ashamed of them like he didn't want to disappoint anyone. Noah stood nearby, clutching his sketchbook. He watched his brother with a terrifying seriousness. Then, slowly, Noah opened the sketchbook to a new page. He had drawn an ear. Inside the ear, a small shape, a little oval, and beside it he drew a single bean so clearly it was unmistakable. Noah tapped the bean drawing, then pointed at Lucas's ear. Nia's breath caught. It was so subtle I almost missed it, but I saw it. The moment her mind snapped into focus. Ethan stared at the drawing like it was a foreign language. "What is that?" he demanded, voice rising. "Noah, what is that?" Noah flinched at the volume, but he didn't look away. He tapped the bean again. Tap, tap. Lucas whimpered. "Ear," he said, barely audible. "Hurts." Ethan's phone was already in his hand. "We're going to the hospital. Now. I don't care what the doctors said last time. We're going now." Nia stood, her hand steady on Lucas's back. "Yes," she said. "Now." I expected Ethan to take over, to bark orders, to call the driver, to command the world into obedience the way wealthy men do. But he didn't. He looked helpless, like a man whose money had finally met a wall it couldn't buy through. As they moved toward the foyer, Noah lingered behind, staring at Elena's portrait. Then he lifted his two fingers in that V shape again, toward the portrait, toward the air, like he was signaling to his mother. I felt my throat tighten. The mansion lights flickered once, twice, as if the house itself was blinking. Somewhere deep inside, a clock chimed, the sound hollow and ominous. And as we hurried out toward the waiting car, I realized something that made my skin go cold. I had come to write a story about a grieving billionaire, but I was about to witness a story about a child who had been trying to tell the truth all along, and the system that refused to listen. The day hadn't even ended yet it already felt like the beginning of a nightmare that would crack open every secret in the Marlowe mansion. The hospital smelled like antiseptic and impatience. Even in the private wing Ethan paid for, the air carried that same sterile exhaustion, like the building had learned to defend itself by making everyone feel small. Lucas sat on the exam table swinging his legs, trying to be brave. Nia stood close enough that Lucas could lean into her when the lights felt too bright. Noah sat in the corner chair, sketchbook open, eyes fixed on every movement a nurse made, like he was recording evidence. Ethan paced. He was dressed in tailored grief. Expensive coat, perfect watch, hair carefully done, but the panic underneath made his hands restless. He kept rubbing his thumb over the edge of his phone as if friction could erase fear. A pediatric neurologist came in first, brisk and polished. Dr. Klein, the same name Ethan had mentioned at breakfast. The doctor smiled the way people smile when they believe they're about to simplify someone else's life. "I understand Lucas has been experiencing headaches, Doctor," Klein said, glancing at the chart. His tone carried a practiced confidence. Given his history and sensory profile, these can be quite common. Nia's jaw tightened, but she stayed respectful. Ethan stepped forward. "He's in pain," Ethan said. "Look at him. This isn't just sensory, something is wrong." Dr. Klein checked Lucas's reflexes, shined a light into his eyes, asked him to squeeze fingers. Lucas did everything, eager to please. Then Lucas pressed his palm to his ear again and made that soft boom-boom sound, his voice trembling. Dr. Klein nodded like he'd seen it 100 times. "We can adjust his plan. Consider a different approach to managing discomfort. Perhaps a calmer environment, less stimulation, maybe a mild medication." Nia's voice cut in, quiet but unmovable. "Doctor," she said, "has anyone actually checked his ear?" The room paused. Ethan stopped pacing. "Doctor." Klein blinked, surprised, as if the suggestion was beneath the sophistication of his specialty. "We've done comprehensive evaluations," Dr. Klein said carefully. Nia didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. "With respect," she replied, "a comprehensive evaluation that doesn't include listening to the child's own signals isn't comprehensive." Noah lifted his sketchbook and turned it around so the doctor could see the bean in the ear drawing. Dr. Klein's lips tightened. "Sometimes children draw symbolic things," he said, dismissive, "especially children who process the world differently." That sentence, "process the world differently," landed like a door closing. Ethan's face reddened. "My son is not a metaphor," he snapped. "He's a person." Dr. Klein stiffened, but then regained his neutral tone. We can refer to ENT if it will ease your concerns, but I doubt we'll find anything significant. Headaches like this are... Lucas suddenly flinched as if a sharp noise had stabbed him. His eyes squeezed shut. He made a sound that was half sob, half gasp. Nia wrapped her arm around him instantly, pressing her palm to his chest. Tap, tap. Then her own chest. Tap, tap. Then back to his. That same calm ritual. Lucas focused on her. His breathing slowed. His shoulders loosened. Dr. Klein watched, almost annoyed. Ethan looked at Nia with a mixture of gratitude and humiliation, like he was realizing she understood his sons in a way he still struggled to. After Dr. Klein left, a nurse came in to escort us to another room. The nurse spoke fast, paperwork in hand, explaining weights and approvals and scheduling. Ethan tried to throw money at it. Whatever it cost, do it now. But the nurse's expression didn't change. "It's not about cost, sir," she said, eyes flicking to the forms. "It's about procedure." Procedure? The word sounded like a weapon. In the hallway, Nia walked beside Noah. Noah's gaze stayed low, but his hand drifted toward her sleeve. He didn't grab it. He just hovered there like a question. Nia slowed to match his pace. "Noah," she whispered, "do you want to show me something?" Noah nodded once. They stopped near a window overlooking the city. Rain streaked the glass like tears trying to escape. Noah opened his sketchbook and began flipping pages rapidly. I watched from a few steps away, careful not to intrude, but I couldn't help noticing the pattern. Ears, circles, small dark shapes. Then, drawings of Lucas holding his head. Drawings of Ethan looking away. Drawings of doctors with blank faces and long hallways. Finally, Noah stopped at a page where he'd drawn a bean, and beside it he'd drawn a tiny cross. Not dramatic, not preachy, just simple. A sign of faith, a sign of hope. Nia's eyes softened. She placed her fingers in that V shape again, and Noah mirrored her. Their fingertips touched. "That's our signal," Nia whispered. "Two fingers means I see you. That's what it means, right?" Noah blinked, then nodded again, slower. His mouth formed a tiny line, as if holding back something heavy. Nia lowered her voice even further. "Sometimes grown-ups don't listen," she said. "Not bitter, just honest. But I'm listening, and you're not alone." Noah's shoulders dropped half an inch, the way someone relaxes when they realize they're finally believed. I didn't know Nia's story yet, not fully, but in that hallway, watching her kneel to Noah's level without making him feel small, I sensed she'd learned that kind of empathy the hard way. Later, while Ethan argued with a hospital administrator about policy, I found myself beside Nia near the vending machines. She stared at her phone, thumb hovering over a message she hadn't sent. "Long day," I said. She gave a tight smile. "Long life," she answered. There was a weariness behind her eyes, the kind that doesn't come from one job shift. It comes from a whole chain of responsibilities. "If you don't mind me asking," I said gently, "why do you work here? The Marlowe mansion isn't exactly a normal job." Nia hesitated. The fluorescent lights hummed above us. Somewhere down the hall, a baby cried, and the sound threaded itself through my ribs. "My daddy," she said finally. "He raised me by himself. He drove buses for 30 years, strongest man I ever knew. Then his heart started giving out. Not the poetic kind," she added, almost apologetic. "The real kind. Bills got loud, and when bills get loud, you learn how to be quiet so you can keep going." She swallowed. "This job pays enough to keep him safe, and I promised him I would." "What happens if you lose it?" I asked. Nia's eyes lifted to mine. There was steel there now. "Then my daddy loses his care. And I can't let that happen, not after everything." There it was, the stake. The reason no one else could help, the urgency in her spine. A flashback flickered in her gaze, so quick it almost vanished. But I saw it. A younger Nia, maybe 15, sitting in a cramped apartment with peeling paint, holding her father's hand as he tried to hide pain, telling her, "Baby, don't be scared. God will make a way." And I saw Nia believing it because she had to. Her faith wasn't decoration. It was scaffolding. A call came. NT was ready. In the exam room, the ENT specialist was younger than I expected, kind-eyed, calm. Dr. Rahman. He spoke directly to Lucas, not around him. "Hi, Lucas," Dr. Rahman said. "I'm going to look in your ear. If you want to stop, you raise your hand." "Deal?" Lucas nodded. He pressed into Nia's side. Nia whispered. Tap, tap, and Lucas tapped her wrist and breathed. Noah stood on the other side, watching like a guardian. Dr. Rahman leaned in with his light. His expression shifted, just slightly. His calm face hardened into focus. There is something in here, he said, and the room went silent. Ethan froze. What do you mean, something? Dr. Rahman kept his voice careful. A foreign object. It looks like a small bean, possibly a dried bean. Noah's sketchbook trembled in his hands. Ethan's mouth opened, but no sound came out. Then his eyes filled. It wasn't just fear. It was rage mixed with shame, mixed with the terrifying thought that his child had been carrying pain, while adults wrote it off as behavior. How long? Ethan whispered. Dr. Rahman didn't speculate wildly. He didn't promise miracles. He simply said, "It may have been there for some time. That can cause discomfort and headaches. We can remove it safely." Ethan's knees looked like they might buckle. He grabbed the edge of the counter to stay upright. Nia stepped closer. Her hand hovered over Ethan's elbow. Not touching, just offering. Ethan didn't take it, not yet. The removal happened quietly, safely, with Lucas holding Nia's wrist and Noah watching every movement, and Dr. Rahman speaking in steady tones like a lighthouse. Lucas winced once, then exhaled like something inside him had finally unclenched. When it was done, Lucas blinked and looked around as if the room had changed shape. "It's quiet," he said softly. Then he smiled. A real smile, not taped on. Ethan sank into the chair, face in his hands, shoulders shaking. "I paid for the best," he choked. "I paid for the best and they—" He couldn't finish. That's when the institutional villain showed its face. Not as a mustache-twirling person, but as a system that moved too fast to listen and too slow to fix. A system that labeled and dismissed and billed and moved on. An administrator entered with a clipboard, already talking about documentation. "We'll need to note that this may have occurred at home," she said blandly. "And we should discuss supervision." Nia's head snapped up. Her voice remained controlled, but I felt heat behind it. "Excuse me," she said. "Are you saying this is his father's fault?" The administrator's eyes flicked to Ethan's watch, his suit, his wealth. "I'm saying we have protocols," she answered. "And if a foreign object was present for an extended period, questions are going to be asked." Ethan lifted his head, eyes wet, face hardening. "Ask me," he said. "Ask me anything." But Noah stepped forward then. Small, quiet Noah. He opened his sketchbook and held up a page I hadn't seen. It was a drawing of a hospital hallway, doctors walking past. And in the corner Noah had written something. Messy letters, but readable. "He hurt." They didn't look. I felt my throat close. Ethan stared at the words like they were a verdict. And in that moment, I realized this wasn't just about a bean. It was about all the times the world decided what these boys could and couldn't feel. It was about the times a father trusted a system because he didn't know what else to do. As we left the hospital, rain hammered the windows of the car. Ethan sat rigid, Lucas asleep against Nia's shoulder. Noah pressed to the far door, sketchbook in his lap like a shield. Ethan's voice was barely audible. "How did you know?" he asked Nia. Nia didn't claim magic. She didn't claim expertise. She simply said, "I believed him." Ethan turned his face away, and I saw his grief transform into something sharper, something that could become a weapon if pointed the wrong way. Back at the mansion, the lights were warm, the air smelled like lemon polish and something floral that made Ethan's eyes twitch. Eleanor again, lingering like a ghost that refused to be ignored. Ethan walked past Eleanor's portrait and stopped. He stared at his wife's painted eyes and whispered, "What did you know, Elena?" No one answered, but somewhere inside the house, a door clicked softly, like something had shifted open, and I had the sudden, chilling feeling that the bean was only the first thing we were going to find hidden in this family's silence. That night, the Marlowe mansion didn't sleep. It watched. It listened. It held secrets in its walls like air trapped behind glass. Lucas was in bed in the twins' wing, wrapped in his favorite blanket. One side blue, one side green, a patchwork that smelled faintly like vanilla and fabric softener. He was calmer now, but every once in a while he'd touch his ear gently, as if confirming relief was real. Noah sat on the floor beside Lucas's bed, sketchbook open, drawing slow, careful lines. He drew a small bean with wings this time, like he was turning pain into something he could control. Nia sat nearby on the rug, legs crossed, humming under her breath, soft gospel notes barely more than breath. Ethan hovered in the doorway like a man afraid to step too close. His hands were in his pockets, but they trembled anyway. "I should have," he started. Nia looked up, not accusing, just present. "Mr. Marlowe," she said gently, "you did what you thought was right with what you knew." Ethan's laugh came out broken. "I knew I had money," he said. "I thought that meant I had answers." He turned away and walked down the hallway toward his own bedroom, Eleanor's bedroom, because grief makes you do cruel things to yourself. I followed him at a distance, not as a reporter now, but as a witness. His room smelled like stale cologne and the faintest trace of jasmine. The bed was made too neatly, like no one was allowed to rumple the past. On the dresser, Elena's hairbrush sat untouched. Her perfume bottle stood like a relic. Ethan sat on the edge of the bed and pressed his hands to his face. Then he spoke into his palms, as if praying to the emptiness. "They dismissed him," he whispered. "They dismissed my son, and I let them. I should have left. But the truth is, I recognized that kind of spiral, the way a person hunts for a single moment to blame so they don't have to face the bigger horror, that the world is indifferent, and sometimes it hurts your children because it's too busy to care." Ethan lifted his head. His eyes looked haunted. "You have kids, Carlos." I shook my head. "But I've been a kid," I said, "and I've watched adults be wrong." Ethan's jaw tightened. "I'm going to destroy them," he said. "Every doctor who looked at my boy and decided he was exaggerating. Every administrator who implied—" He stopped because the rage threatened to swallow him. I took a careful breath. "If you do this," I said, "do it so Lucas is safe, not so your anger has somewhere to go." Ethan stared at me like he didn't know how to do anything without turning it into war. In the days that followed, the mansion became a strange battlefield of quiet and paperwork. Calls were made, meetings scheduled. Ethan's legal team arrived, polished people with tablets and polite voices, talking about records and liability and timelines. But the more Ethan pushed, the more the system pushed back. Hospital representatives claimed the object could have been recent. They suggested it might have happened at home. They spoke in that careful language that makes responsibility evaporate. And then, just when Ethan thought his money could force truth into the open, another letter arrived. Sealed, formal, and cold. It came from the Marlowe Family Trust Board. Ethan opened it at the breakfast table, hands steady until his eyes hit the key sentence. Then, the color drained from his face. Noah and Lucas watched him closely. Lucas, still tender, leaned into Nia's side. Noah stopped drawing. Ethan read aloud, voice flat with disbelief. "Due to recent concerns regarding supervision and ongoing medical oversight, the board has scheduled an emergency review of custodial arrangements and household management." Nia's spine stiffened. "Custodial?" she repeated. Ethan swallowed. "They're implying I'm unfit," he said. There it was, the institutional villain expanding. Not just a hospital, not just a doctor. A network of systems. Legal structures, trust governance, public image, liability. A machine that protected itself by blaming the human closest to the mess. Ethan slammed the letter onto the table. Plates rattled. Lucas flinched at the sound. Ethan saw it, and immediately softened, guilt flooding back in. "Sorry," he whispered to Lucas. Lucas nodded, eyes wide. "Quiet," Lucas said, voice small. Ethan's face crumpled. He stood abruptly and walked out into the garden like he needed air that didn't judge him. Nia stayed with the boys. She lowered her voice and said, "Okay, we breathe." She did the tap-tap ritual on her chest, and then Lucas's chest, and Lucas copied her. Noah watched, then lifted his 2 fingers and touched Nia's 2 fingers lightly. "Noah," Nia whispered, "you want to pray with me." Noah didn't speak, but he nodded once. Nia bowed her head, not dramatic, not loud, just steady. "God," she whispered, "we need wisdom, we need protection. We need truth to come to light without hurting these babies. Give us courage, Lord, the kind that don't shake even when the world gets loud." Noah's eyes stayed open. He stared at his sketchbook and drew a tiny candle beside the bean with wings. Then he drew a heart. Lucas whispered, "Amen," like he'd learned the word meant, "You weren't alone." That afternoon I found Nia in the mansion library. The room was dim and rich with the scent of old paper and cedar polish. A ladder rested on rails, and Elena's handwriting, framed quotes and little notes, decorated a shelf as if she still curated the air. Nia was holding a small notebook, not one of Noah's. This one looked older, edges worn, cover soft from being held too many times. "What is that?" I asked. She startled slightly, then relaxed when she saw it was me. "I found it in the twins' art cabinet," she said, "tucked behind the paints." She opened it and showed me the first page. It was Elena's handwriting. My heart lurched. "How do you know?" I asked. Nia pointed to the looping E, the way it curled like a ribbon. "Mr. Marlowe showed me her letters once," she said, when he was really missing her." We turned pages slowly. Eleanor had written observations, small details about the twins, about their moods, about what calmed them. She wrote like a mother trying to map a world so her children wouldn't get lost. Then the tone shifted. Eleanor had written about doctors, appointments, notes, dismissals. One entry stood out, underlined twice. "They keep saying sensory, but I know his cry. It's pain. If something happens and I'm not here, don't let them silence him." Naya's hand trembled. "She knew," she whispered. My journalist brain clicked into motion. "This could matter," I said. Naya nodded. "But if the trust board is already coming," she swallowed, "they'll twist it. They'll twist anything." And then she looked at me with a raw honesty that made me respect her more than any polished attorney ever could. "Carlos," she said, "I don't want to fight for fame. I want those boys to be safe, and I want my daddy to live long enough to see me keep my promise." I saw it again, a flashback in her eyes. A younger Nia at a kitchen table covered in overdue bills, her father's hands shaking as he tried to hide it, his voice gentle. "Baby, God will make a way." And Nia too young to carry that responsibility, carrying it anyway because love doesn't ask permission. The trust board meeting was scheduled for Friday, only 3 days away. Ethan's attorneys tried to reassure him. "This is routine," one said. "They can't remove custody without serious cause." But Ethan didn't trust the word routine anymore. Routine was what had let Lucas suffer, while professionals shrugged. That evening, a storm rolled in. Wind rattled the mansion windows. Rain struck the glass in sharp fingers. The lights flickered once, then steadied. The mansion creaked like an old ship. Ethan paced in his office, the one room that still felt like his, lined with awards and business trophies that now looked useless. He gripped the phone until his knuckles whitened. "I need every medical record," he told his team. "Every visit, every note, every time they dismissed him. I want it all." One of the lawyers hesitated. "Hospitals can delay. There are processes." Ethan's laugh was bitter. "Processes," he repeated. "Always processes." Across the hall in the twins' wing, Lucas sat in the reading nook with Naya. He held a plush fox and leaned into her shoulder, listening to the rain. Noah sat at the small table, drawing the mansion again, but this time he drew a door in the wall, an outline that hadn't been there before. Noah stared at his own drawing, then stood and walked to the wall in the hallway near Eleanor's portrait. He ran his fingers along the paneling, slow and deliberate. He tapped once, then twice, tap, tap, and then pressed his ear gently against the wood. Nia noticed. She rose quietly and followed him. "Noah," she whispered, "what do you hear?" Noah didn't answer. He simply reached up and slid his fingers along a seam in the panel, and the wood shifted. A hidden door, flush with the wall, released with a soft click. Nia's breath caught. She looked around, heart pounding, then looked back at Noah, who stared into the dark opening, like he'd found a secret he'd been holding in his chest. Inside was a narrow space, just enough for a small box and some papers. Noah reached in and pulled out a velvet pouch. Nia's hands shook as she opened it. Inside was a key, old, ornate, and attached to the key was a small tag with Eleanor's handwriting. For the truth. The storm outside thundered like a warning. Nia stared at the key, then at Noah, then down the hallway toward Ethan's office. Because whatever Elena had hidden, it was meant for a moment like this. And if they didn't unlock it in time, the trust board, and the hospital, and every system that protected itself, was going to decide the Marlowe boys' future without ever hearing their hearts. The mansion lights flickered again, and the hidden door behind Elena's portrait whispered open just enough to change everything. The key felt heavier than metal. It felt like Elena's hand pressing responsibility into Nia's palm. Nia closed the velvet pouch and tucked it into her pocket, then knelt to Noah's height. "Noah," she whispered, "did your mama show you this?" Noah didn't speak. He lifted 2 fingers in that V shape. "I see you." Nia returned the signal. "I see you too," she murmured, "and I'm proud of you." Noah's face remained serious, but his eyes softened as if relief had finally found a place to sit. Lucas padded down the hallway, plush fox in hand, rubbing his ear gently. His voice was small. "No more boom," he said, like he wanted to reassure everyone. Nia smiled. "No more boom," she repeated. "We thank God for that." Lucas nodded solemnly, then brightened. "Tap, tap," he said, and tapped her wrist. Nia tapped back. Their private language held the household together in a way money couldn't. The storm intensified. Wind howled around the mansion like it was trying to pry secrets out of the walls. In Ethan's office, his legal team kept talking about strategy, but Ethan's eyes were elsewhere. On the twins' wing, on Elena's portrait. On the way, Noah's small shoulders carried too much. Nia approached Ethan carefully. "Mr. Marlowe," she said, voice low, "Noah found something." Ethan's head snapped up. "What?" Nia hesitated. She could feel the risk. If this was misinterpreted, the trust board could twist it. But hiding it felt worse. Truth had already been delayed too long. She pulled out the velvet pouch and opened it. Ethan stared at the key, lips parting. For a moment, he looked like he'd been punched with memory. "That's Elena's writing," he whispered. Nia nodded. There's a hidden panel by her portrait," she said. "Noah found it." Ethan rose so fast his chair scraped the floor. His lawyers started to object. "Mr. Marlowe, this isn't the time." But Ethan didn't listen. He followed Nia down the hallway, his footsteps heavy, his breath shallow. Noah waited by the hidden door, posture straight, like a small soldier guarding a sacred place. When Ethan arrived, Noah lifted 2 fingers. Then he pointed at the seam in the paneling. Ethan's hands trembled as he reached for it. He pressed and the door clicked open. The air inside was cooler, dusty, unused. Ethan reached in, searching. His fingers found a small wooden box with a brass lock. Nia handed him the key. Ethan inserted it and turned. The lock opened with a soft snap, and something inside Ethan broke at the same time, quietly, invisibly. Inside the box were papers bound with a ribbon and a small voice recorder, old-fashioned, the kind Elena might have used when she didn't want her thoughts trapped in a phone. Ethan's throat moved as he swallowed. "Elena," he whispered. He pressed play. Her voice filled the hallway. Warm, steady, intimate. The mansion itself seemed to lean in. "If you're hearing this," Elena said, "it means you found the box. Ethan, I'm sorry. I didn't want secrets between us, but I had to protect the boys." Ethan's face crumpled. Nia's eyes filled with tears. Noah stared at the box, unmoving. Lucas leaned into Nia's side, listening, his brows knit as if recognizing his mother's cadence, even if he couldn't fully grasp the words. Elena continued, her voice gentle but urgent. "I noticed Lucas's pain. I told them. I told them again and again. They kept labeling it, they kept dismissing it, and then—" She paused, breath catching. "Then I realized the system doesn't always protect children. Sometimes it protects itself." Ethan's jaw clenched. "There are notes," Elena said. "Dates, names, requests I made, refusals I received. Not because I want revenge, but because one day you might need proof. Because they will try to blame you, Ethan. They always blame the parent when the system fails." Ethan's knees buckled. He grabbed the wall to keep from falling. Nia's instinct was to reach for him, but she held back. She knew pride could be fragile. Elena's voice softened. "And Ethan, if you ever doubt Noah, if you ever doubt Lucas, please remember, they are not broken. They are honest. The world is the one that lies." The recording ended with a faint click. Silence swallowed the hallway. Then, as if on cue, the lights flickered hard, once, twice, and the mansion went dark. For a half-second, everything froze. Then emergency lights blinked on, dim amber, casting long shadows down the corridor. The storm roared outside like a beast. A security guard's voice came from a radio somewhere. "Power surge. We're switching to backup." Ethan's breath came fast. "The box," he said, voice shaking. "The documents." Nia tucked the papers close to her chest. "I have them," she said. "I have them." A sharp smell reached us. Hot plastic, faint smoke. Nia's heart jumped. The mansion wasn't a place where things malfunctioned. Ethan paid to prevent accidents. But Storms didn't care about money. Another security voice, louder now. We have smoke near the west wing. Electrical. Contained, but we're moving everyone away from that corridor. Ethan spun toward the twins' wing. Noah, Lucas. Nia was already moving. She didn't run in panic. She moved with purpose. They're safe, she said firmly. We go together. They hurried into the twins' wing. The emergency lights made the mural ceiling look like storm clouds themselves. Lucas clung to Nia's sleeve. Noah held his sketchbook like armor. Security met them and guided them toward the safe sitting room, an interior room designed for storms, with soft lighting and blankets and a small lantern. Everyone's safe, the security chief, Mr. Dorsey, said. He was a broad-shouldered man with tired eyes, former military, Ethan's right hand in keeping the mansion secure. The smoke is in the west wing, far from here. Fire team is already on it. Lucas trembled anyway. Nia knelt and pressed her palm to his chest. Tap, tap. Lucas copied her, breathing in sync. Noah watched the hallway, ears tuned like he was listening for something beyond sound. His eyes flicked toward the library direction, where the documents had been stored for years, and where the storm now seemed to aim its anger. Ethan's phone had no service for a moment. He slammed it in frustration. Of course, he muttered. Nia stood slowly. She looked at Ethan, then at the papers in her hands, then at the dark hallway beyond. If the West Wing fire spreads, she said, voice controlled, we could lose the library, and we could lose any other evidence in there. Ethan stared at her. I'll handle it, he said automatically. Billionaire reflex, command, control. But Mr. Dorsey stepped in. Sir, no, he said. Fire team is moving. You stay with the boys. Ethan bristled, pride flaring. Those documents are my wife's. Nia interrupted gently but firmly. Mr. Marlowe, she said, the boys need you steady. Let me speak with Mr. Dorsey. Ethan's eyes narrowed. You're not going into any smoke, he snapped, fear disguised as anger. Nia didn't flinch. I'm not reckless, she said, and I'm not leaving the children. But I know this house. I know the passages. If Mr. Dorsey says it's safe enough to retrieve one thing, I can do it quickly with him. Mr. Dorsey hesitated. We're already pulling items, he said, but it's controlled. Nia's mind raced. The trust board meeting was in 2 days. The hospital was already implying blame. If Elena had more notes, if there were additional records, losing them would mean losing a shield. Nia closed her eyes for half a second, the way people do when they're praying without performance. Then she opened them. I believe God don't give us fear to freeze us, she whispered, mostly to herself. He gives us wisdom. She looked at Ethan. If you trust me, she said softly, let me help you protect what Elena left. Ethan's throat moved. He looked at Lucas, small, scared but safe. He looked at Noah, quiet, watching, carrying too much truth. He looked at Nia, steady, brave, not asking for praise, only asking to do what was right. The reversal was subtle at first. Ethan's shoulders dropped. His billionaire posture softened. I don't know what to do, he admitted, voice breaking. It was the first time I heard him say it without trying to cover it. Mr. Dorsey spoke into his radio. Got an update. Fire team says corridor is clear for a quick pass. Smoke is minimal. Nia nodded once. Then we go quick, she said. Ethan grabbed her arm. Not hard, just desperate. Please, he said, eyes wet. Be careful. Nia placed her hand over his briefly. Always, she promised. She and Mr. Dorsey moved down the hallway toward the library. I followed at a safe distance with Carlos's instinct. Bear witness, but don't become a hazard. The air grew warmer. The smell of smoke was faint but real. Emergency lights made everything feel like a dream. They reached the library door. Mr. Dorsey cracked it open. Checked. Clear enough, he said. Nia slipped inside, heart pounding. The room was dim, dust motes floating like tiny ghosts. The ladder rails glinted faintly, the scent of old books mixed with something sharp and electric. She moved quickly to the shelf where Eleanor's framed quotes were. Her eyes scanned, searching for anything out of place. Then she saw it. Behind a row of leather-bound volumes, a slim binder labeled in Eleanor's handwriting, Lucas. Notes. Nia's breath caught. She pulled it free, hugged it to her chest and turned. As she did, a small crackling sound popped behind her. An electrical hiss. A flash of light. Not an explosion, not something violent. Just a sudden, dangerous reminder that storms make their own rules. Mr. Dorsey stepped in instantly. Time, he said. Now. Nia didn't argue. She moved fast, steady, out the door, down the corridor. The smell of smoke faded as they reached safer air. When they returned to the safe room, Ethan rushed to her. "You got something?" he demanded, voice raw. Nia held up the binder. "Elena kept notes," she said. "Real notes." Ethan's knees gave out. He sank to the floor right there. Wealthy man, powerful man, collapsing like a child who finally understands he can't protect everyone with money. And then, in front of his sons, in front of his staff, in front of me, Ethan Marlowe did something I never expected. He reached for Nia's hand and held it like a lifeline. "No one listened to my boys," he whispered. "You did. You saved him." Lucas looked at Ethan with wide eyes, then crawled closer and touched Ethan's cheek with his small palm. "Daddy," Lucas whispered. "You sad?" Ethan broke. He pulled Lucas into his arms and held him like the world was trying to take him away. Noah stepped closer too, slow, careful, then pressed his 2 fingers gently against Ethan's hand. His version of, "I see you." Ethan looked up at Noah. Tears slid down his face. "I see you," Ethan whispered back, voice shaking. "I see you, son." Outside, thunder rolled, but inside the safe room, the mansion finally felt like it was breathing again. Yet the danger wasn't over. The systems were still circling. The trust board was still coming, the hospital was still covering itself, and Elena's notes, now in Ethan's trembling hands, were about to expose something bigger than negligence. Because as Ethan opened the binder, the first page wasn't just a timeline, it was a warning that someone had pushed quietly for Lucas's pain to be labeled and ignored, and the name at the bottom of the page made Ethan's face go white. It wasn't just a doctor, it was someone connected to the trust board, and the storm outside suddenly felt like the least of their problems. The morning of the trust board review arrived sharp and cold, like the world had decided tenderness was a luxury. The storm had passed, leaving the garden soaked and silent, roses heavy with water. The mansion smelled like fresh repair. New wiring, clean air filters, lemon polish, and underneath it all that faint jasmine ghost that always seemed to return when Elena's name hovered in the air. Ethan hadn't slept. None of us had, really. The binder lay open on the dining room table, like a body on an autopsy slab. Pages of Elena's handwriting, dates, appointments, quotes from doctors, notes about dismissals, and one particular entry that made Ethan's hands shake every time he reread it. "I believe someone wants Ethan to look unfit." The trust board is not only about money, it's about control. Beside the entry was a name, a hospital executive, a consultant to the trust board. A person who could influence narratives with one phone call and a careful phrase, concerns regarding supervision, institutional villain, not a single monster, a web. Ethan's lawyers came early, speaking in polished tones. "We will present the notes," one said. "We will show due diligence. We will emphasize the ENT finding. We will counter any implication that—" Ethan cut him off. "My son suffered," he said quietly. "That's not a counter. That's the truth." Across the room, Lucas sat on the couch in the family sitting room, wrapped in his blue-green blanket, plush fox on his lap. He looked lighter now, but not untouched. Pain leaves shadows. Noah sat at the window with his sketchbook, drawing the garden fountain, but he kept adding small details. A tiny key, a candle, a heart, his way of keeping meaning in his hands. Nia knelt between them with a small snack tray, making the moment feel normal on purpose. "Okay," she said, voice soothing. "We do our calm steps." Lucas tapped her wrist, tap tap, then pointed to Ethan. "Daddy tap?" he asked. Ethan hesitated. He wasn't built for rituals that weren't transactional, but he walked over slowly, crouched, and offered his wrist. Lucas tapped it, tap tap, like he was granting Ethan entry into their private language. Ethan's face crumpled. "Thank you," he whispered. Noah lifted his 2 fingers and touched Ethan's 2 fingers lightly, sealing it. For the first time since I arrived, I saw Ethan not as a billionaire trying to control grief, but as a father trying to learn his son's world. The trust board review happened via conference, faces on a screen in Ethan's office, voices polished and cold, men and women in suits, some with sympathetic expressions that didn't reach their eyes. The chairperson spoke like this was a budget meeting, not a family. "Mr. Marlowe," the chairperson said, "recent events have raised concerns. The hospital reported Ethan's lawyer started to object, but Ethan lifted a hand. "No," Ethan said. "Let them talk." The board member continued, careful words arranged like bricks. A foreign object remained in Lucas's ear for an unknown duration. That implies a lapse in supervision. We must consider what is in the best interest of the children. Nia stood in the corner of the office, hands clasped, jaw tight. She wasn't allowed to speak in the meeting, technically. Staff rarely were. Systems love silencing the people who notice the cracks. Ethan's voice was steady, but I heard the tremor underneath. "A lapse?" he repeated. "My son went to your best doctors multiple times. They dismissed him. He was in pain, and they told us it was sensory. They didn't look." The board member's expression tightened. "Mr. Marlowe, we are not here to debate medical practice." Ethan leaned forward. "No," he said. "You're here to use medical negligence to take my sons." Silence. Then the chairperson cleared her throat. "That is an inflammatory statement." Ethan reached for Elena's binder. His hands were shaking, but he held the pages like scripture. "My wife knew," he said. "She documented everything, and she warned me the system would try to blame me." He read Elena's notes out loud. Dates, quotes, requests for ear checks, refusals disguised as reassurances. He didn't dramatize it. He didn't need to. The truth was heavy enough. One board member shifted uncomfortably. Another stared at the desk. But the consultant, the hospital executive Elena had named, smiled faintly, the kind of smile you see on people who believe language can erase reality. "With respect," the consultant said, "personal notes are not official records. We must rely on proper documentation." Ethan's eyes narrowed. "Proper documentation?" he repeated. "The kind your hospital controls?" The consultant shrugged slightly. "We have protocols." That word again. Protocols. Procedure. Systems that protected themselves by making families prove pain. Ethan's lawyer pushed forward a formal packet of records, including Dr. Rahman's ENT note confirming the foreign object and the likely cause of discomfort. The consultant's smile tightened. "You see," the consultant said smoothly, "the ENT intervention resolved the issue. That suggests the matter has been addressed. We still must consider household supervision going forward." Ethan's breath hitched. His anger rose, but this time it didn't explode outward. It collapsed inward, into something almost like surrender. And then the room changed. Because Ethan Marlowe, wealthy, powerful, feared, turned his chair slightly and looked at Nia. His voice was hoarse. "Ms. Carter," he said. "Nia." The board members blinked, startled to hear a staff member addressed directly. Nia's eyes widened. "Yes, sir." Ethan swallowed hard. His pride fought him, I could see it. A lifetime of command battling a moment that required humility. Then he stood. He walked around his desk, and he stopped in front of Nia, in front of the screen, in front of the systems. Then Ethan Marlowe sank to his knees. Not dramatic, not performative. Raw. A man unmaking himself because he finally understood what mattered. "Please," he said, voice breaking, "tell them what you saw. Tell them what my sons told you. Tell them the truth, because I didn't hear it fast enough." Nia's hand flew to her mouth. Tears filled her eyes, not because she wanted power, but because she never expected to be seen like this. By him, by the board, by a world that usually looked through her. She looked down at Ethan, kneeling, the billionaire begging. She took a breath, closed her eyes for half a second, and I knew she was praying. Not for revenge, but for courage. Then she spoke. "Lucas was hurting," Nia said, voice steady. "Not acting, not being difficult. Hurting." He touched his ear. "He cried different. Noah drew it. Noah drew the bean before any doctor looked." She lifted Noah's drawings, scanned copies we'd prepared, toward the camera so the board could see. "A child who doesn't talk much still told the truth," she said. "He told it with his hands, with his art, with the way he watched his brother." Nia's eyes sharpened. "And when we asked the hospital to listen," she continued, "they used words to make the pain disappear. They called it sensory. They called it common. They acted like the boys' bodies were metaphors instead of bodies." One board member looked away. Another cleared his throat. The consultant tried to interrupt. "Ms. Carter, you are not medically trained." Nia didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. "I'm trained in love," she said simply, "and in paying attention." Silence again, this time heavier. Ethan stayed kneeling. He looked up at Nia, tears on his face, and I saw the reversal complete. Money could not save him here. Truth could. The chairperson's tone softened slightly, forced by the gravity of what was happening. "Mr. Marlowe," she said, "we will review the documents and—" Ethan's voice cut in, quiet and lethal. "You will also review the conflict of interest," he said, eyes fixed on the consultant. "Because my wife's notes suggest someone close to this board influenced medical narratives, and I won't let my sons be used to protect reputations." The consultant's smile faltered for the first time. Ethan rose slowly, still shaky, and returned to his chair. But something in him had shifted. The grieving, broken man wasn't gone, but he was no longer passive. He had learned to fight the system without becoming it. The board ended the call with vague promises and formal language. But I saw it in their faces. The story had changed. They couldn't easily paint Ethan as negligent now without exposing themselves. After the call, Ethan walked to the twins' wing as if pulled by a magnet. The mansion corridor felt quieter, warmer, like the house itself had exhaled. Lucas was in the playroom, stacking soft blocks. Noah was at the table drawing. Nia sat on the rug, shoulders slumped with exhaustion. Ethan stepped in and sat on the floor in his tailored clothes, like he was choosing their world instead of demanding they come to his. Lucas looked up. His eyes searched Ethan's face. "Daddy, okay?" he asked. Ethan's voice cracked. "I'm learning," he said. "I'm learning how to be okay." Noah slid a drawing across the table toward Ethan. It was a heart. Inside the heart was a small ear, and beneath it, in careful letters, Noah had written, "Listen." Ethan pressed the paper to his chest like it was oxygen. "I will," he whispered. "I promise." Later, Dr. Rahman visited the mansion for a follow-up. Simple, calm, no drama. He checked Lucas gently, reassured without grand promises, and reminded Ethan that listening to the child's signals mattered as much as any test. Lucas sat still, proud of himself. When it was done, he smiled at Ethan and said very softly, "I hear better." Ethan's eyes filled. He pulled Lucas into a hug, then Noah too, holding both boys like he was holding the future. In the days that followed, Ethan didn't just throw money at the problem. He used it with humility. He arranged for an independent review of care processes at the hospital through proper channels, ensured the twins' advocates were present at appointments, and, most quietly, he sat with Nia in the kitchen one evening while the mansion hummed around them. The kitchen smelled like warm bread and cinnamon tea. The lights were soft. Rain tapped gently on the window, not angry now, just present. Ethan looked at Nia, eyes tired. "Your father," he said. "What does he need?" Nia's throat tightened. "He needs consistent care," she said. "And he needs peace. He worries about being a burden." Ethan nodded slowly. "He won't be," he said. "Not if I can help." Nia's tears fell then, not because of charity, but because of dignity. "Thank you," she whispered. Ethan shook his head. "No," he said. "Thank you. You saved my son because you listened, and because you believed him." That night in the twins' wing, Lucas lay in bed and stared at Ethan with sleepy eyes. "Daddy," Lucas whispered. "Yes, buddy?" Lucas placed his small hand over Ethan's chest. "I can hear your heart," he said. Ethan froze. His breath caught. He pressed his hand over Lucas's hand, and in that moment, the mansion didn't feel like a monument to loss anymore. It felt like a place where healing could live, room by room, ritual by ritual, truth by truth. I left the Marlowe mansion weeks later with my camera still mostly unused, because the real story hadn't been about wealth or tragedy. It had been about a child's pain that adults dismissed, about a mother's voice hidden in a wall, about a black woman whose faith and attention cut through systems that relied on silence, and about a father who finally learned that love isn't control, it's listening. And now, before I go, I want to leave you with this. How many times have we mistaken someone's pain for behavior, simply because it was inconvenient to understand? How many Noahs have been drawing the truth in plain sight, waiting for someone to believe them? If this story moved you, take a second to reflect and tell me in the comments, when was a moment in your life where being truly listened to changed everything? And who in your world needs that kind of listening from you today? If you want more emotional stories like this, subscribe to the channel, share this video with someone who needs hope, and leave your answer below, because your voice might be the comfort someone else is praying for.